Hi, Jim Ziegler, the Alpha Dawg, and we've got another spectacular program for you today. Service writers. And guess what? I got the absolute master of service advisor training. Maybe the king, royalty.
You're too
Jeff
kind.
Cowan, how you doing, big guy?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Well, let's talk about Jeff Cowan's Pro Talk. Tell me about the company.
Well, I can officially say today that we've been in business for 36 years. And 36 years ago, we started the niche of training service advisors. I got to apologize. I got a little bit of a cold here. It's training service advisors on the service drive as they help customers. First one to have a sales training program for them. First one to have survey score training for them and the like. So, and we've shown dealers for the past 36 years how to substantially increase their profits, their survey scores, and everything else that goes with it. So it's been just a great time.
Well, I'll tell you, fixed operations is going to be more important as time progresses right now, especially with gasoline engine cars being sort of phased out, EVs coming in, and the average car on the road today has been out there. I just read 14 years.
Oh yeah, and with the EVs especially because every workshop that I do, every meeting that I'm in, the question I get asked is, "Hey, EVs are coming in. What's that going to mean to fixed ops?" I think it's going to mean everything because now the game has been upped. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're starting to see these Teslas and some of these other EVs be on the road long enough that you're having to replace the batteries. Very expensive. You're looking at 10 to 20, 40, $50,000 in some of these cars. And I
Oh
tell you
no,
what,
no, $50,000 to replace a battery?
on some of these cars, yeah, so
My gosh.
I think the average right now is currently like $36,000. So if you're going to be asking customers to come to your drive for $36,000, you better have a service advisor that knows how to close sales. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. Well, the rumor is that you can increase the average service writer's production by $17,000 a month net profit.
To start, it's to start. When you take a look at the hours per repair order that are being sold out there, that's the customer pay. The average service advisor out there today in the nation's 1.3 hours. Okay, so we have yet to see a service advisor or service drive that can't produce at least 2.5 hours. So you add, another hour point two onto, double what they're doing now, all day long. Yeah, we do it all day long.
Double the production of the average service advisor. And I read something that says that if you learn to write service, you'll write your own check.
Yep, that's the name of our book. I mean, it's real simple. What's the problem that the industry has right now. This is the reason I wrote that book. The reason I started the company is that the word advisor has messed it all up because so many people think these guys are just there to advise, just to go out and write it up, be clerks and whatnot. And really, what the job is to sell. You got to go out. You've got a customer today like you've never had before. Easiest customer to handle because what's the customer do before they come in? They do the same thing you and I do if we're going out to buy a new product. We Google it. So they Google it. They're led to a blog. On the blog, it's written by a master technician. Master technician says, based on your problem, based on your mileage, and based on the type of car you have, you need to go to a dealership and you need to be prepared for it to take this amount of time, cost this amount of money, and the like. So before the customer even gets to the dealership, they already know pretty much what they're going to be asked to buy, how much it's going to cost, and how long it takes to do it.
So the
So
consumer's not coming in looking for an advisor. They've already got a pretty good idea what the repairs are going to be. What they probably
right.
even know the cost. I mean, so what does a service advisor to do? What's their job description?
Well, what they need to do is they need to reinforce what the customer is reading online because most service advisors what they do is they get a customer and they get afraid of the money. They judge what people will and won't buy based on on their paycheck. So what they do is they spend more time talking customers out of what they truly need than doing what they should be doing, which is talking customers into what they need. And here's the big problem: it not only costs the dealership and the service advisor at the time the money in the sale that they're talking about, It costs them the customer because, Jim, we not only do business with car dealerships, we do it in the aftermarket as well. One of our biggest customers is Firestone. I've worked with Goodyear, Pep Boys, and just tons of
So
independents.
you're
People
working
don't.
with a lot of the aftermarket vendors as well.
Oh, absolutely. And so the biggest thing we hear when we stand on the service drive, a customer comes in, is why they left a car dealership. We'll say, hey, thank you for coming in today. You've got X amount of miles on your vehicle. First time we've seen you, so let me ask you some questions about where you've been going. Well, I used to go to the dealership across the street, but they would never help me get what I needed. I'd go in and tell them I had this concern, I needed this, and they would tell me, not to worry about it or whatever. And then 2 or 3 months later, I'd have to go back and get what I went in for originally because they talked me out of it. I got to go to a place where they really care about me, they know my car, and they're willing to help me with what I know. And there's a big fallacy out there that the average car dealership, it costs more to go to a car dealership. Well, the fact is, the average aftermarket store is 7% more expensive than a car dealership. And the aftermarket's tickets are typically have 20% more sales on them than the car dealership does. The customer wants to buy, the customer's prepared to buy because the customer sees the car as being the most important thing they have, and so they need to keep it running.
Especially if the cars are going to be out there for 14 years, still in
Oh,
operation.
Oh yeah, and they are going to be, because people are going to fight this EV thing tooth and nail. So I see that combustion engine thing going up higher and higher. Although I'm not totally convinced EV is going to be the solution. I mean, I live out here in Southern California, and I don't know if you've been watching the news, but
Yes, I have.
now here's what's crazy. They're going to not allow new cars to be sold with gas engines by 2035. But what has our governor in California been doing for the last 2 weeks, because we've got a heat wave going on where the average temperature is 100 degrees. He's been on TV asking people not to charge their cars.
And Ford just put out an edict to several 100,000 people, I believe it was. Charge your car outside the garage so you don't burn your house down.
Yeah, and here's the thing. California's pushing this stuff, and I'm not against EVs. Don't get me wrong. It's just they're not given it enough time to evolve. The neighborhood right beside us is called Dove Canyon. 2 weeks ago had blackouts for 3 days because the grid couldn't support the amount of electricity. Because out here, I think I read the other day too that 1 in 5 cars that's been sold in the last 12 months out here has been an EV. So you got a lot more cars out here using them. Now, not 20% of the cars out here being driven are just 20% being sold the last year. I think it's like only 8% of the cars out here right now are total EV, and it's already crashing the grid. So a lot of opportunity for fixed ops though, because I'll give everybody listening a tip. When you start talking the kind of money you're going to be talking to replace these batteries, because they're going to need to be replaced, right? Now's the time to get into the warranty business on the service drive, where you're actually offering warranty sales off the service drive, because it's going to be very easy.
Extended service agreements are going to be more important than ever, and I'm going to tell you, how many service advisors know how to write or sell the benefits of a service contract?
I would say less than 10%, and I blame that on the dealer. If you want me to place blame, I'll place it on the dealer, because the dealer doesn't. They try to set these advisors up. Well,
there's no compensation.
Yeah, you go. Yeah, you go find somebody that needs one, and then bring him to F&I. So you've got a guy coming in, thinks he's going to be checking his car in for 7, he's going to be in and out in 15 minutes, and now you spend 2 of those minutes getting him all excited about an extended agreement, and now you got to walk him into an F&I department at 7:30 that's not open, so the guy has to wait an hour and a half to sell it. It's the wrong way to do it. And the technology's out there. You should be able to identify they need one, present it to them, and write it up and add it to the ticket in less than 2 minutes. And we've got processes to show people how to do just that. And then the second thing is you have to be willing. If anybody's listening that's interested in this, you have to be willing to pay the service advisor exactly what you'd pay the F&I guy. And here's what we get from general managers and dealers. Oh, you can't do that because they're service advisors. Well, what do you care? I mean, if you're going to pay,
do you care?
I mean, because when you sell them extended service agreement, they're coming back to you. Your F&I guy, by the way, had their shot when you delivered the car. And their penetration currently is somewhere around 40%. So you're going to let that other 60% walk away and go someplace else and buy it off of a TV ad? I mean, come on. I mean, this
Well,
is
the
easy
average
stuff to do.
service advisor is making 50 or 60 grand a year, and the top advisors are making 120,000 a year. A
Oh,
big disparity. Big
well,
disparity.
the top ones, I got to be careful because nobody ever believes this, but I can walk you to people right now making this amount of money. The top ones are actually cracking 200,000. I mean, a service advisor out there, the top 20% writing service today are above 100%. And if you take that 20% that's above, 20% of them are above $100,000. And if you take that top 20% and look at their average, it's 140,000.
So anyway, 140,000 a year average. Top
for the top
producers,
for the top 20%. Yeah.
the top 20% averaging 140,000 a year. And when I teach a sales department, and I relate to sales department, I say, what did the top guy or woman in this dealership make last month in the sales department? And they'll say, well, $17,000. How much did you make? And why wasn't that you?
Right. Yeah, because here's the big pushback we get. Well, Jeff, you live out there in California, so everybody gets paid higher. You're in New York City, or you're in San Francisco, or you're in Dallas. No, it's
No.
anywhere. It's anywhere, and here's why. All the cars come from the same manufacturer with the exact same owner's manual, and all those owner manuals have the exact same recommendations. So whether you put 30,000 miles on a car in Maine, or you put 30,000 miles on a car in Indiana, or Texas, or California, it's 30,000 miles. They all need the same thing. Now, there might be some slight differences. For example, when you're up in Maine and it gets below zero, you might have to do some things a little bit differently, like sell them more stuff. When they're in Arizona, where it gets up and stays above 105, 110 degrees for 60 days, you're going to sell more batteries because, and more transmission fluid. But outside of that, they're the same cars from the same manufacturer. Any dealership, no matter where it's located, no matter what the brand is, these advisors can do it if they're trained. And more importantly, the dealership can make that money.
We're talking to two audiences here. Number one, I'm talking to service advisors. Why aren't you making that kind of income? And we're talking to dealer principals and general managers. Why isn't your dealership making that extra $800,000 annually that your top producers are producing?
Yeah, and the 800,000 you mentioned, that's for the first 510. So meaning if you go into a dealership that's at 1.3, which is the average one, and you take them up to 1.8, that's an $800,000 increase on average.
Hours per hour.
Yeah, dollars per hours. Yeah, hours per hour, dollars per hour. So now that's 800,000. So now if you go from 1.8 up to 2.5, now it turns into closer to $2 million.
So if a dealer's leaving $2 million a year on the table, and primarily because the service advisors aren't producing the sales, you're not compensating the service advisors to do that. And where can they get that kind of training?
Well, it's funny you ask, because I know a guy. Well, that's what I've spent my life doing, and what we do is really different. Not only did we develop the niche, but the way we train is when we go on site, is we stand side by side with the advisors, coach, critique, role play, and write service with them as they're working with real customers. 85% of the time we're in a dealership, we're on the drive side by side with the advisors.
So you're practicing in live time.
Lifetime. They'll write somebody up. We'll pull off the side and say, you did this right, this right, this right. But when you got to this point here again, you've made a mistake. So let's role play that before you go out to the next customer. If they don't get it within 5 or 6 customers, we will write the customers up and have them listen to and watch us so they can see.
Wait a second. So you're telling me that you and your employees can actually do what you teach?
Exactly. Yeah, because yeah. And the thing is that most service advisors within 3 days. Here's the thing: it's crazy, because we'll not only show them how to increase the dollars and the hours, we'll show them how to eliminate heat cases forever, because that's what service is famous for, right? All the heat cases and disgruntled customers. We'll show them how to eliminate those just like that, and that's what gets the service advisor to buy in. You mean if I actually talk to the customer this way and do it this way, not only could I potentially double my income, but I'm not going to have to deal with any heat cases. And within 3 days, we get them closed on it, and they never look back.
I
I mean,
had a service. I have a service manager at Banner Ford back way in the day, and he said, "I said, well, how do you handle these heat cases?" He said, "I take them in my office, and behind my desk, I have a full-size bathroom mirror." And he said, "A customer will not act up when they see their face in that mirror acting up."
Well, that's a fact. As a matter of fact, if you go to that was started by Sam Walton back in the day at Walmart. So if you go into most Walmarts, their customer service and they've got a
There's a
big
big
mirror.
mirror behind them.
But you know what the best way is to handle a disgruntled customer is not
Tell me.
create one. Not create one. And so how do you not create one? You handle them the right way. And that's why, we've got these books and these programs with
How many
over
books do you have, Jeff?
well, we've got 3 different ones, and we got 2 more coming out. But between those books, we've got over 225 different word tracks that were written, tested, and used on service drives before we ever showed them to our customers, so they know that they work. And we
Words
constantly,
you say are your toolbox.
yeah,
Words are your toolbox. I mean, it's like when the Snap-on truck shows up, you know.
yeah. And the thing is I've never met a service advisor that didn't want to be successful, but I've met thousands and thousands and thousands that didn't know how to be. And in today's market, where the biggest phone calls we're getting right now is, where can I get advisors? Where can I get advisors? Where can I get advisors? Well, first thing you got to do is keep the ones you have. So how do you keep the ones you have? You train them to be successful. You train them to go out and do the job and not get yelled at. You train them to get perfect survey scores. You train them to get the upsell. You train them to deliver world-class service. You train them to get high effective labor rate. If you train them, then you'll keep them.
Jeff, slow down a second. Train them to do what? Now you just hit a whole laundry list of subjects that we need to train the service advisors. Slow down.
Yeah.
Tell me what those are.
Well, here's the thing, because the big fallacy in the car industry is you get a service advisor, it takes 2 or 3 years for them to really become successful. That's the biggest line of BS anywhere, because anybody that says that has never done the job like everybody that works at Pro Talk has done the job. Because look at this number. Average service advisor writes 15 customers a day. Now, that average write-up takes about 7.5 minutes. Keep that in mind. 15 customers a day, that's 75 a week. That would be 300 a month. So your first 60 days, you will have 600 attempts to figure out how to talk to the customer in such a way that they not only love you and want to give you a perfect survey score, but they buy everything that you present to them and are so excited about that they come back and continue to do business with you for years, bring in their friends and their other cars, and then come back and buy another car.
So that's because most service advisors do a complete walk around on the customer's car with them, and they do all these professional things leading up to the sale.
Oh yeah, and you got to train the people to do that. And so if you train your people, your service advisors, how to do that and make them successful, because like I said, within 3 days, we visit a dealership. We'll walk in and nobody wants to be trained. They hate us, but within 3 days they come over to us and say, I was not excited about this training because I just thought it was more, factory stuff. It doesn't really make a difference. But you guys know what you're talking about. It's obvious you guys have done this. And within 3 days, I've seen my sales double, and I have no heat cases. At the end of the day, there's nobody yelling at me, and the service advisors buy in. And then from that point, then we just work on perfecting them and tighten them up so we can get them in that 2.5 range. It's real quick. It really is, and it's a lot of fun to do, because you're right. You got to walk around the car. You got to know how to walk around the car. You got to know how to point things out, how to make a 6-step benefit-based presentation, how to ask for the money, how to handle and anticipate those objections in such a way that the customer loves it. And we've got that way.
It's fast. Honest to goodness, if you are a service advisor, if you're listening to this broadcast right now, pay attention. Pay attention. You're not making $150,000 a year, 200,000 possible. You need to pay attention to what we're talking about here, because a lot of people have excuses why they're staying the way they are. But the truth of the matter is, 150,000, 200,000 a year, those numbers are possible on almost any pay plan we've seen. Is that true, Jeff?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, excuse me again. I got that cold, so sorry about that cough. It is, but it's a matter of knowing how to handle the customer. That's all it is. I mean, because again, all these cars come from the same manufacturer with the same recommendation, so it doesn't make a difference where you are. It gets down to what you and I, know, Jim. Excuse me, there, and that's this. If you're going to get in this, then why then be professional. Maximize the opportunity. That's one of my favorite sayings. Maximize the opportunities, because I get this question all the time. It drives me crazy. Jeff, I'm an advisor. How can I tell if I'm leaving money on the table? Well, if you didn't make more than anybody else in your service drive, you left money on the table. Because we'll go into a dealership, you got four service advisors on average. The first one sitting there is making 50, the second one's making 60, the third one's making 70, 75, and then you got this guy or gal over here making 90 or 100,000, 110,000 a year. What do we know about the drive? It'll pay 110,000 a year. What do we know about the person that's making 50? Every time they go out and talk to a customer, they're leaving half of their income on the drive. So if you're going to be there for the same amount of hours with the same manager, same
Wait a
product,
second.
tech.
Wait a second. The guy or the woman making the 150,000, they just caught the lucky customers.
No, they study. Now they can tell you they didn't, but they're serious about it. They're the people that get out of bed in the morning and they're excited because they get to go help 15 customers. They can't wait to get there. Once they leave the house and their family, their mind kicks into gear on that 10, 15, 20-minute ride in. Here's who I've got coming in today. Here's what I know I've got. Here's the parts situation, the chip situation, the manager situation, all this stuff. They get to the drive. They don't wait. They don't walk in 1 minute till 7. They're there at 6:30. They've got their coffee brewed, their computer on. They're looking at the list of people coming in. They know what they've got in parts. They know what they can sell and they can't sell. They know which techs are in, which ones aren't. And so by the time they open up that door, they're ready to go with that first customer and they give it their all. And they're there all day long working this, and they stay. If they get off at 5 o'clock, great. If they have to stick around till 6 o'clock to deliver a vehicle, then that's what it is, because they're there to feed their family and and maximize the opportunity and have a lifestyle that most people only dream about. They're there to work. The person that's making 50 or 60, they're the ones running in at 1 till 7. They're trying to turn everything on. Their first 2 or 3 customers get lousy service because they're not prepared. They don't know who's coming in next because they didn't look it up. They're not serious about it. So if you go in and you're looking for something serious, we're going through this thing right now with this big college debate in the country. And what the country is realizing is you don't have to have a college degree to be successful in the United States, that you can go to a trade school or learn a trade and many times do as well or better than people that have the college degrees, and spend all the money. We've got a thing here, being a service advisor, where you can go out and if you are willing to study and put in just once you get trained and once you do it, if you're just willing to put in 15, 20 minutes a day of studying your craft, you can make money that people only dream about.
We got one of my favorite general managers in the world, Ryan Easter, and he says process, process, process.
Well, he's exactly right, exactly right, exactly right. That's what it is. See, when you have a service department, you want everybody doing and saying the same thing. You have to have a process, because here's what I've learned about service advisors and processes. If you don't have one for them to follow, guess what they're going to do, Jim? They're going to create their own. So now if they create their own and you got 4 advisors out there, that means you have 4 separate processes that are not only different, but they change hour to hour. Because if I'm a service advisor and I'm allowed to create my own process, here's what it's going to be. What gets me to 6 o'clock the fastest with the most amount of money and least amount of heat? There's my process. You
But
know?
even if the Los Angeles Rams won the Super Bowl, they still showed up for spring training.
Well, they did. You're seeing the final couple of years of Tom Brady. Got to go down in history is the arguably the best quarterback to ever play the game. But guess where he was when spring training opened? He was there.
He
You
was
know.
they every one of them. And by the way, there's a heck of a game on tonight, but another story.
Well, I read a thing where Carrie Underwood, the famous country singer, right? She's getting ready to go out on tour here soon and whatnot, and she did what a lot of these big time performers do, which is she rented an arena, okay, for 30 days. She rented an arena and she went in and she set up the entire stage. And her band at the 30 days have gone in 27 days and done that show at least once, if not twice in a day, as long as her voice will allow it. And they ask her why she's doing that. She says because what most entertainers do is they will go out and they will take 5 to 10 shows to get it down, and then the rest of the tour gets a great show. I think the first person that shows up in the first seat on the first night of opening night should get the same show the person does 90 dates later. She practices. Now this is a woman that doesn't even have to work anymore, and she's at the top of her game, and she practices. I mean, I don't get it. And I've been doing this for 36 years, and I still come in and I still read sales books, and I still read. I'm in my home office, and if I turn this around, this is my home office library. That's part of it. I can't show you all of it. I've got 2,000
Every
books.
one of us super performers, uh, I used to do business with the Abraham dealerships in Miami,
Sure.
and
Great
it
group.
was Anthony Abraham, and he had Abraham Chevy, Abraham Ford. I used to laugh. He had a dealership called Abraham Lincoln, and and Anthony Abraham had a saying: "The man at the top of the mountain didn't fall there."
That's a great saying.
That was his. And by the way, Ryan Easter just said, great case. He's watching us on the Internet Battle Plan Facebook page. He said, great content, great guests today. We'll share with all of our department heads and all of our service advisors this broadcast.
That's great. That's
So
great. Thank you very much, Ryan.
he's always been a big advocate of training. He's been a client of mine for 20, 30 years. I don't know, a long time. Since he was a teenager. But anyway,
Right.
well,
Well,
let's talk about where they
the
can
best-
get
you
this
know the best
quality
thing
of
is-
training.
the best-
Let's
you know the
talk
best
about
thing
that a second.
webinar.
Where can they get this quality of training? I mean,
Well, one way they can get this quality of training is coming up here September 20th and 21st. I'm going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada, presenting.
I sort of knew that.
Yeah, and I'm going to probably sound a little pretentious when I say this, and I hope I don't. But I take these workshops very, very seriously. Now we have a lot of fun at them. We laugh a lot, but I will begin next week because we're 2 weeks out. I will begin practicing this workshop so it's flawless. We constantly are updating the content. As a matter of fact, this workshop I'm going to be delivering two hours of it is going to be content that's never been taught in my workshop before. I'll be teaching it myself.
Brand new content and
Yeah.
the website is automotiveservicetraining.com.
Yeah.
Now, you've got 2 workshops coming up. You got one in September and one in October.
Right. They're both in Las Vegas at the Lightspeed World Class Training Center. This is where all the trainers go to do their training. And it's set up for training. It's got all the technology you need. Each seat's a lazy boy chair for the attendees with a built-in desk. I mean, it's the most comfortable place you'll ever go to do training. But the content I'm going to deliver is going to allow people to walk out of there and immediately get 5/10 on their service drive and customer pay, get their effective labor rate up to 92 to 95%, show them how to get perfect survey scores.
Wait a minute.
Sales.
Yeah, and I know the answer to some of these questions because I've talked to some of your clients. You get their effective labor rate up to 95%.
Yeah, because effective labor rate is driven by how much discount you have, and so what's a weak salesperson's favorite tactic? Discount the deal. Well, why do you discount the deal? Because you don't know how to sell the value. So we will show you how to sell the value of what it is that you're presenting to your customers.
And that's why so many dealerships are leaving $800,000 minimum on the table in the service department.
Oh yeah, because they have advisors that don't know how to share this with their customers and get them excited about it. The average check this number out. The average service advisor out there for getting the entire sell. Now I'm not talking part of a sell. Just some of the things the technician recommends, but getting the entire sell. The closing ratio out there today is somewhere between 30 and 40%. That's the average service advisor. They come to my workshop, I will show them immediately how to get their closing ratio above 70%. Now, I'm not saying 7
Now, is this a menu-driven walk around?
Yes, menu-driven and need-based. And so, we're not talking 7 out of 10 times you get part of the sell. I'm saying 7 out of 10 times minimum. I will show them how to get the entire sell, everything that car needs, because the people that are making the 100,000 plus, their closing ratio is somewhere between 85 and 90%.
And dealers would love to pay $150,000 to a service advisor, because the percentages
Yeah.
work out much in their favor.
Oh yeah, and you take a look at, today the landscape's changed so much in the dealer business. Where the average dealer out there today, I think now has 4 or 5 franchises. We're talking, a lot of money, and it's going to become extremely important because as the chips come back on the line, and because I've been out driving around looking at car dealerships, and some of the manufacturers are starting to load up their lots again, with product, and so this chip thing, whether it's real now or not, is people are going to have the inventory back on the lots. Well, when that happens, what's going to happen next? You're not going to be able to charge 15,000 over invoice. You're going to have to go back to the days of negotiating and actually sell the car. So where's the profits going to come from? It's going to come from where it always comes from, fixed ops. And that's the thing that really scares me about what's been going on is how are these customers that are paying 10, 15, 20, $30,000 over sticker, 5,000 over sticker. Now they're in this car upside down. They're going to have the king on that car for 5 or 6 years, or have a pocket full of cash to trade out of it, right? So what's going to keep them coming back to you? A service advisor that keeps coming back. What's the old saying? Sales sells the first one, service sells the second one. So
I was a record breaking variable manager. I never became a dealer. I never became a general manager because I didn't understand the service side of things. I was afraid of it. I didn't know what went on the other side of the wall, and I didn't take the time to learn. I set records in the sales department. 95% or more of general managers came out of the variable operation.
Well, you hit it's first of all, it's very, very admirable that you would admit that you didn't know fixed ops. But if you really want to get down to it, the biggest problem in fixed ops is just what you just said. Car dealers and general managers who run the place don't understand it. They were brought up through the variable side, and service is very, very scary. So now, in all due respect to managers out there, because there's some great service managers and great fixed operations directors out there, but what happens is you got a dealer, general manager that doesn't understand the department, so they walk back to their service manager that's being paid $150,000 a year or more, and they say, "Hey, I just watched this webinar with this guy named Jeff Cowan, and he said we should be at 2.5," and the service manager says, "Oh, come on, boss. Don't you think if we could be at 2.5, we'd be at 2.5? I came in here, you're at 1.3. I got you up to 1.4, and some months even 1.5. Don't listen to that stuff. If I could get it, I could get it." And they walk away. And so,
well, in all respect, as a consultant, I can see where you're coming from, because you see the best practices from dealerships all over the country.
oh yeah, we've been
Most
over 4,000.
dealerships live in their own little sphere of influence, their own
Right.
little world, their own little demographic area. And you're picking up the best practices from all over the country and bringing
Exactly.
them to one location, to Las Vegas, to a seminar with concentrated learning.
Yeah, and so the dealers, they're asking the wrong questions. So if there's any dealers or general managers listening here today, here's what I want you to do. And I promise you, we will not try to sell you anything. Just do yourself a favor. Call us and ask us which questions you should really be asking your service manager. And we'll not only tell you what questions to ask, we'll tell you what answers you should get. And if you don't get those answers, what the solution is. Because that's the problem. It's like you said, they don't understand it, and so they don't know which questions to ask. Because if your dealership, I'll just be as blunt as I can be, and I'll be nice. I won't even put the maximum numbers out there. If your dealership currently isn't above 2.0 hours per repair order, including oil changes and customer pay, if they're not at least 85% effective labor rate, if you're not in the top 10% in the nation with your survey scores, and then you're doing something wrong. Okay, it's that simple, and I can back this up all day long with documentation. As a company, we've been on over 4,000, 4,500 service drives all across the country. As an individual, I've been on over 750 service drives, and it's side by side working them. And I'm telling you, these are real numbers that are documented. I've got clients that will get on the phone all day long with you and say, we used to think it wasn't possible. Now we know it is. And it's easiest thing to do in the world. And what the best part is, we love it.
What kind of questions should a dealer ask service manager?
Well, the first thing is that I would ask him is do we have a proper walk around process? And if so, what is it? And as you as the manager, can we walk out here to a car and you physically show it to me? The next question is do we have a process out here that everybody follows? And if so, what is it? And can you walk me through it? Okay. And right there, the service manager is going to start getting defensive and say nobody wants to do walkarounds. Walkarounds don't work. We have a process. The customer comes in, we send somebody out, and they
Nobody
talk.
wants to do walkarounds. Hey, my experience says that most people don't want to do what works.
Yeah, and so see here's the thing. You say, okay, so do you have a process for your service drive? Well, yeah, we do. What is it? Well, the customer comes in, we send our advisors out to talk to them. Okay, that's a good step. So then what do the service advisors say? Well, they greet them. Well, what exact words do they use to greet them? We just kind of leave it up to them. It's a personality driven thing. Wrong answer. Okay, so then what's the next step? Well, they ask the customer what they came in for. How do they do that? What words do they use? Well, they just ask them by saying what? Well, just ask them. Each thing's different. Wrong answer. Okay. I mean, it's the reason they're answering the question that way is because they don't have a process. They don't know what it is, And don't want to be hard on service managers. The problem is with most service managers, they've never been trained to do it. So how can you manage somebody to get higher numbers on a service drive if you've never done it yourself? If you as a service manager can't walk around a car, if you as a service manager can't say the right word tracks and don't have right word tracks, then how can you expect your people to say it? And people say, well, word tracks, you can't do that. Yes, you can. Every place that you go, Jim, every place you go, Disneyland, word tracks to death. You go to Fleming's Steakhouse, you go to Ruth Chris Steakhouse. They've got, Ruth Chris, check this out. Ruth Chris, 5-star steakhouse, right? You walk in there, $80 for a steak. Now, that's a lot of money for a steak, because they probably got that steak from a similar cow that the guy over at McDonald's got his from. They all moo, right? So what's the difference? At Ruth Chris, they know what to say. I've got a cousin who works at Capitol Grill, which is a 5-star steakhouse, just like Ruth Chris for some people that don't have those places in your area. And every day, just like at Ruth Chris, she goes in at 4 o'clock. Her shift starts at 5. She goes in at 4. Now here's what she's told me. The first half hour is when they talk about things, housekeeping things. She said, from 4 to 4:30, here's what's going on in the place. From 4:30 to 5, she has to memorize, on average, a 6-sentence or longer word track, brand new every day. She has to memorize it before she goes out on the floor. Now, she's knocking out 140, 150 grand a year. Every day she has to learn a new word track. And I said, well, what's the word track? She goes, it's typically the daily specials. And I said, well, why do you have to memorize that? She says, because we've learned over time that if somebody asks you what the special is and you read it, they don't think you believe what you're reading. They just think it's something that somebody threw on the thing. But if you're able to make eye contact with your people, your customers that are sitting at the table, and explain it to them with a little bit of flair and excitement, she goes, we took our specials from 15% penetration to over 50% penetration. She goes, when it's a special, there's a reason it's a special. We're making money off of it.
Jeff, when I was 18 years old, one summer I sold encyclopedias door to door.
No
Does
kidding.
anybody remember what an encyclopedia is? And we had to learn a 1-hour verbatim word track. Hi, folks. My name is Jim Ziegler. I'm with the Sales and Advertising Department of the Crow Collier Corporation. Now, we used to sell the famous old Collier magazine. Perhaps you heard of us, but I'm not here to sell you magazines. I still know the entire pitch today.
Well, it's because you're a professional and you take it serious, I mean, why?
Could you imagine?
No, yeah.
Look, here's Ryan Easter with a question for you.
Okay, let's see what says. Okay, training for service for customer facing.
Do you recommend shadowing before you turn them loose?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what we do. So I'll give you some trade secrets here. The first day we get to service drive, we sit each person down for about an hour and a half. And we show them what the process is, and then we tell them what part of the process we want them to focus on. So generally speaking, we'll show them the process. We'll say, okay, now we go back out here on the drive. I want you to do the meet and greet the way we just talked about it, and I want you to ask the diagnostic questions this way. So let's role play that a couple times and make sure you got it down. Great, you got it down. So then you go out and you stand side by side with them, or 5 feet off their shoulder, and listen to them do it with the customers. And if they do it well with the customer the first 3 or 4 times, compliment them. If not, critique them. By the fifth time, if they're not doing it the way you just taught it, then you either you pull them off again and you start role playing with them, and or you write up a customer showing them how it's done. Once they get it done, then you say, okay, now you've got this done. Now the next step in the process is to do the walk around and point things out. So let's role play what that looks like. You role play it with them, and then you shadow them, and then once they get that, you stair step them, and then by day 3 you've got them through the whole process, and then you cut them loose. Yeah, but yeah, you definitely want to shadow them, make sure they're doing, because a service advisor, excuse me, will look at you and say, oh, I've got it down.
I've got a Hall's mentholyptus for you here.
Yeah, no kidding. I need to have more of those around. But service advisors are just like anybody else. You say you got this down, yes, and you turn them loose without watching them. They may think they have it down. Their intention may be that to get it down, and they think they're saying it right, but chances are they're not. So yeah, you got to shadow them. You got to work with them, and you got to hold their hand. But again, the thing is, and I want to stress this. We're in a place, and like I said, by the third day, we've got total buy-in from the advisors. Why? Because the average one, we've worked with them with 75 customers. And so in 75 customers, we showed them how to get this right. And what they notice when they get to Wednesday is, man, before you got here, I was writing 1.3. The last 2 days, my numbers are above 2.0. Before you got here, I'd write up 15 customers. 6 or 7 of them would be unhappy and yell at me or say something derogatory to me at the end of the day. Wednesday, I didn't have any of that. Everybody was happy.
That's amazing. You've got that down. I personally have stood in more than 1,000, maybe 1,500 dealerships.
Sure.
I have worked the desk. I've done F&I. I've caught up. So I've taken TOs with customers in every state except Alaska. And I would tell a dealer before I went into a dealership, or my employees went into a dealership, there's going to be a 3-phase thing going to happen. Day 1, all the mutineers are going to line up and say, and they're going to have a little meeting in the men's room or out there by the smoking point about
right.
When this Cowan guy hits the plane on Friday, we're going to go back to what we used to do.
Right.
Okay, that's the first conversation. We're the mutineers. All the mutineers line up the first day. The second day, one of your salesmen is going to blow a deal on purpose. They're gonna make a customer irate on purpose. I told you that Ziegler stuff would do that. Okay. Then the third day we hit a good deal and people are slapping high fives and everybody's bought in. And does that sound like what you just said to me?
Yeah, exactly. Because what happens is we get the same thing. You get 4 advisors on average. You got the one guy that walks over that's doing it all, and he's making the most amount of money. He says, I know you're here to help these guys because they need it, but you don't have to worry about working with me. Okay, fine. So then we go down to the person that just started, that's barely scratching 50
Everybody
grand.
knows him. Everybody knows him. Matter of fact, if you're showing this in a meeting right now, everybody just pointed at him.
They probably did. When you go over that, so what we do is we go over that 50,000 person that they're willing to try anything because they want to make the big money, and so they'll do anything you ask them to do. And so then what happens is typically the same thing by that third day. That rookie, that green pea, that one that doesn't even know how to start, barely knows how to start the car, starts throwing up tickets at $500, $1,000, $1,500. They came in for oil changes.
All of a sudden, we got $1,000 tickets crossing the desk, and
yeah. And what even makes it more interesting is we're not showing them how to push people. They're not twisting their arms, and they're not selling them stuff they don't need.
You don't need to lie, cheat, sneak, deceive, or misrepresent. No, it's all persuasion and finesse.
Yes, and offering what the customer needs, and the customer knows they need it today because they looked at it before they got there on the internet. The car is the most important thing to a customer, and I'll tell you why. This change. See, we follow this very, very closely at Pro Talk. What the customers are doing. We're the only company that I know that consistently and constantly updates their content for the customer walking in today. And when COVID hit, we're the only company that's updated our process, because when COVID hit, the customer's attitude changed. See, before COVID, customers would go to a dealership for service, and it was a necessary evil. But then what happened is COVID hit, they shut everything down and hit everybody. We're one news conference away from losing all public transportation, airplanes, buses, trains, Uber, Lyft, taxis, all goes away. If that happens, how am I going to get to the grocery store to get my share of toilet paper? So it hits the customer like a ton of bricks that the car is the most important thing. And so they become infinitely easier to handle and more willing to buy than they ever have before, and they're also made in the mindset before we went into COVID, the average customer would keep their car somewhere between 5 and 6 years. Coming out of COVID, the general thinking is what we're seeing in service, they're going to keep it an average of 8 years. All right, so if they're going to keep it an average of 8 years, how do you keep a car running for 200,000 miles? You service it and you repair it when it's needed. And customers know that. The
An
average price
individual will keep a car for 8 years, and the average car on the road has been out there for 14 years.
For 14 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, and they want to keep them. And now you're looking at the average price of a car. I think I read the other day. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I read the other day the average price of a car is $46,000, something like that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I saw the same article. Yes.
$46,000. $46,000. I mean, that's gonna, car payment on that is gonna take up somewhere around 15 to 20% of the average person's income. You don't think they're not gonna protect that thing? And that could.
I bought a fully race-equipped Dodge Super Bee in 1968 for $2,800.
You should have kept it if you don't still have it. That's a heck of a car. You know what I'm noticing about doing this webinar?
What's that?
Is this? It's like I'm the before picture and you're the after picture. I always forget how handsome you are until I get on these webinars.
I'll quit it.
But hey, my whole life I've been a before picture. I'm okay with it.
Hey, I'm 75 years old. I don't mind saying that.
Hey, I hope I look as good as you do when I'm 75.
I
don't know if I'm gonna make it.
I got underwear older than you.
I don't know if I'm gonna make it to 75. I'll tell you why. Me and my wife were sitting around the other night watching Netflix, that new series, I Killed My Spouse. And it's a great series, but I look over at my wife and she's taking notes. I don't know if I should be nervous about that or not.
Hey, Mark Rom, great content from two legends. Well, thank you. Being a legend is a heavy responsibility.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're certainly a legend. That's for sure. That's for sure. And
golly.
I gotta share this with people. I mean, this is probably going back about 10 years ago. Maybe maybe 12, and maybe even a little bit longer. I really don't remember, but I know it was at least 10 years ago. We were both at Orlando. We were both speaking at the NADA convention. And I'd followed you and I watched what you did and all that stuff. And me and the wife were on an elevator, and we're coming downstairs. We're at the Hilton Hotel, and the doors open, and you're standing there. And you just got through speaking, so you got a little bit of adrenaline going, whatever. And I tell you what, me and the wife, we both followed you, and it was like we were meeting Brad Pitt. I mean, we just took a step back. There he is, because you were traveling, I was traveling, so I never got the opportunity to sit in on any of your workshops, or ever got to meet you. And there you were, and I remember, being starstruck. It was so funny. And at that particular convention, they had several movie stars there and race car drivers and stuff, but you're the only one we looked at. We didn't even know what to say. I just said hi. And you started talking to us. We're very kind. I'll never forget that, though. It was funny.
Well, it's so funny. I tell people I could sell a car in an elevator. I could meet somebody, a complete stranger, strike up a relationship, and before they get to their floor, I can sell a car.
You probably would have sold one if we weren't getting off the elevator. As a matter of fact, it was funny about that. My wife says, "Can you believe you finally got to meet him after all these years?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Wasn't it great?" And I said, "Yeah, the greatest thing was we're still on the elevator with him." And she said, "Why?" I said, "Because by the time we get to the 10th floor with that guy, we'd own a new car." And she just started laughing.
But it's amazing. Because I will go in an elevator sometimes, and my wife hates it when I do this. If I get in a real packed elevator, I'll turn to the crowd and I'll say, I suppose you people wonder why I called this meeting.
Yeah.
And everybody in the elevator cracks up. I've done that any number of times.
I might have to steal that. That's pretty funny.
It is absolutely hilarious. We got Mark Rum, we got Eric Giddens, excuse me, Eric Giddens, Ryan Easter, old friend of mine. The thing about this broadcast is more people will watch us on the replay. Let's talk about the upcoming workshops. We're going to be in Las Vegas, and what's the venue?
The venue is the Lightspeed VT. They're the ones that have the platform with a lot of sales training on it. They're about 5 miles off the strip in Highland Park, and they've built this training room for seminars. They host seminars in it all the time. All the time. It's got everything you'd need for this to be just a great meeting. And so you don't want to come just for that. You want to come because the content that I'm going to deliver is world class. And if I sound a little bit pretentious, I guess I apologize. But I work very, very hard on the content. And I will work very hard to show your advisors how to set the expectations. How to get a customer to leave the car for a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks to get it repaired. How to set expectations. That's actually the biggest thing to our training process is managing the customer's expectations.
And
We'll
that's
show
going
them
to be
how to.
September 21st. And the second workshop is going to be October 19th.
Yeah, they're 2-day workshops. So it's the 20th and 21st, 19th and 20th in October. And you really want to sign up. Anybody out there listening, we've got a few seats left. It's a smaller venue. It only holds about 60 people.
Here's the information.
Yeah, so if you really want to go, this is it. And I will tell you this. I will guarantee that if you send somebody to it or you come yourself, this will be as pretentious as it sounds. I will do. So I'll say it this way. I will make every effort to make it the best service workshop you've ever gone to. I always do that. Whenever I step in front of a group, I look at it this way. If you're going to give me your day or 2 days and you're going to invest in me, then I owe it to you to be the absolute best I can be, and I will do everything in my power to make that happen. What's cool about this workshop, I was looking at who signed up for it. We've got some customers coming that have sent people for years to the workshop. We've got some returning people, and so it's going to be a good mix. So anybody that comes to it and has a question, hey, he just said to do this. Does that really work? There will be people stand up there and say, yeah, this works, and they can.
It always helps when there's somebody in the room that says, "Oh, we've done this before. We've attended Ziegler's events. We've attended Cowan's events. This really works."
Yeah, there's a guy coming by the name of Ben Lopez, and he's a great customer of ours, and he comes and brings people to most of our workshops, and he will tell you, before we started, he goes, we had 5 locations, we now have over 18 locations. Before each location was at the end of the year was profiting about 100,000. Now each location is profiting $1 million, and he says, we were there working it, but what put us over the top was we followed Jeff's process. So there'll be people there that will explain what it's really like to go back and set this up, what the hard things are, what the easy things are, and the like. If you're gonna send your service advisors or your directors, managers, or a general manager or dealer principal, if you're gonna go to one fixed ops workshop, this is the one to go to. I take it very, very seriously, and I will guarantee I will deliver top flight. You will not regret coming.
There's the information on the screen right now.
The only thing that I fear is going to happen is people are going to come up and say, I don't think I paid enough for this. And that was kind of.
Come on now. Come on. That's a stretch.
That was kind of. I'm probably coming across cocky. I wish I could take that back because I work very, very hard at being humble. I know where I come from. I come from the cornfields of Indiana. I'm not college educated. Very humble backgrounds, the whole thing, and I've worked very, very hard to do everything I can to make sure that the people that come are as successful as they can be. I'm just clowning around here. I'm not a pretentious jerk.
If people want to see the replays of these videos, and you and I have done several, if they want to see the replays, there's the site, Ziegler on Demand. It's free. There's no charge. ZieglerOnDemand.com. The replays will be there. I'll have this video on replay by this afternoon or early tomorrow morning at the latest. So if you want to use this for a sales meeting with your service advisors or your service manager, you want to show them this video, it'll be on Ziegler on Demand in the morning at latest. So there it is right there, Ziegler on Demand. To attend Jeff's upcoming workshops, go to automotiveservicetraining.com or call the 800 number.
Something else I'll offer them too, Jim, if anybody wants to for their staff.
You're giving stuff away. Come on, let's do it.
I do 2 podcasts every week. If they want to get online and give us their information or call that number, give us their information, we'll send those to their mailbox first thing on Tuesday mornings and Thursday mornings. and I've got over 120 of them recorded. We'll give them access to all 120. The average one's about 10, 12 minutes, something like that. So it's a quick meeting. We pick a
I've been
topic.
watching those podcasts because, like I say, service is my weakness. Fixed operations is my weakness. And if you're a general manager, you're a dealer, and you are too proud or too embarrassed to cover your weakness, I cover my weaknesses. I don't mind saying, hey, look, I'm weak in service. I'm weak in fixed operations. I will study what I don't know. Slim Pickens, Marlon Brando, and One-Eyed Jacks. Slim Pickens said, I'm going to hang you in the morning. And Marlon Brando said, you don't know what you don't know.
I remember that line.
You don't know what you don't know. And of course, he didn't hang in the morning. Matter of fact, I think he killed Slim Pickens shortly thereafter.
That's a great quote. But no, I mean, if you're a professional and you want to be the best you got to be, then if you want to be the best of the best, then it just doesn't happen by accident. It's study. And one of the things that I will hit in my workshop is I will lay out a individual training plan for everybody that attends, which is at least 15 minutes a day, and I will show them exactly what to do in that 15 minutes a day that will change their life forever. You give yourself 15 minutes a day for self-improvement, I will change your life forever.
Now, Mark Rom has a question. Should there be any difference in potential based on the type of OEM you're working for?
Yeah, there's some slight differences, and I want to stress the word slight. Obviously, you're going to approach people a little bit differently in a high-end store than you will an entry-level type of car, but it's not as vast as you think. And what I mean by that is this. There was a day, 25, 30 years ago that a guy that drove a Mercedes was a guy that drove a Mercedes, and a guy that drove a Chevrolet or a Chrysler was a guy that drove a Chevrolet or Chrysler. Not to be pretentious, I'm working from my home office, and if you drive down my street today, you would see in these driveways, you'd see a Tesla, you'll see a Mercedes, you'll see BMW, Audis, you'll see there's a guy having a midlife crisis down the road that's got a Ferrari. There's all these high-end cars, but sitting beside every one of them is a Toyota, a Chevrolet truck, a Ford, a Kia, and the like. My point in sharing that with you is that the difference in the customers has really, really shrunk because it's basically the same customer.
Do you know? Here's a stat for you. What is the number one vehicle owned by people with a net worth of more than $1 million?
I don't know. What would it be? That's a great question.
And I know this. I've seen the stats. A Ford F-150.
Oh, I believe that. I totally believe that.
There's people with a net worth of more than $1 million own a Ford 150.
Well, think about it. If you're driving a BMW, you're driving an Audi, you're driving a Mercedes. They don't have trucks. So where do you go to get them? You go to the truck makers, and who makes the trucks? The entry level manufacturers: Toyota, Honda, Chevrolet, Ford, Chrysler. So I mean, it's really the same customer. But to go back to that gentleman's question, when we visit a place, we adjust it to the marketplace you're in, and we adjust it to the manufacturer that you're in, because the way you'd handle, for example, a Chevrolet customer out here in California versus the way you'd handle one in Indiana is slightly different, but we make those adjustments. But again, that difference isn't as much as most people think.
So anyway, what have we not told people today that we need to tell them?
We need to tell them that fixed operations. Remind them that fixed operations is the department that covers all the expenses in a car dealership, and your service advisors will see more customers in a single day than a car salesperson will typically in a week. So they're going to have more impact on your survey scores, more impact on your profitability, more impact on making that second, third purchase, that customer coming back and doing business with you long term. They're the most important person. They have more impact on your customers than anybody else in the dealership, including the dealer, and they get the least amount of training. And so if you really want to be, top of your game and maximize the opportunity you have as a business owner, a department head, or the like, you've got to get your people trained. If you're a service advisor and you want to be one of the best, you've got to train yourself and make a commitment.
Well, the thing about a workshop is they're not in the dealership. They're not distracted by telephones and fires to put out. Once you get somebody in a workshop, they are concentrated on learning and the curriculum in
Well,
front of them.
yeah, and let me tell you if I can again. I hope I don't come across as pretentious because I'm really not that way. But here's what people tell me my biggest strength is when they come to the workshops. They say, we've preached to our people to do walk arounds. We've preached to them to learn word tracks, and we can't get them to do it. The one thing that you're great at is your ability to sell people on this is the right way. I can't tell you how many times people have come in and say, I would have never thought memorizing word tracks and walking around a car was the way to go. As a matter of fact, I fought it. But after sitting here and listening to you for the last 2 days, I'm absolutely sure it's the right way to go.
Well, I can attest that you are not a pretentious individual. Now, me, on the other hand, humility is never an affliction I've been afflicted with. I have never caught a dose of humility. I love me dearly.
That's funny. As a lot of people do, Jim, that's for sure.
Do you remember the movie Smokey and the Bandit, of course?
Oh, I love it. I just watched it a month ago.
Okay, remember in the very beginning, Sally Field was a runaway bride.
Right.
And she jumps in the Trans Am with Burt Reynolds, and they're having a conversation. She said, "What do you do?" And Burt Reynolds said, "I show off." Well, that's what I do.
That's a classic movie.
I show off. I love that line. Well, listen, we have been on for 1 hour. I could talk to you forever. Jeff Cowan's Pro Talk Service Advisor Intensive Training, Las Vegas, Nevada.
There you go.
Las Vegas, Nevada, at the VT Super Training Center. Unbelievable facility. October 19th or September 21st. The phone number is on the screen. automotiveservicetraining.com. Now, if you're watching this on a replay, give Jeff a call. There's the 800 number, and him or one of his top experts will answer all your questions. And one of the questions you need to ask is, Mr. Dealer, Mrs. Dealer, Mr. General Manager, Mrs. General Manager, what questions should you ask your service manager about their performance in the service department?
Yep.
Well, listen, let's wave goodbye to the people, Jeff.
All right, buddy. You take care of yourself. God bless you, and God bless everybody for listening, and hope to meet you all.